Well, thank you, Norma. As far as announcements this week, yearly meeting starts on Thursday. So, um, and then next Sunday will be yearly meeting Sunday. I haven't gotten the link yet, but I'll get it and send it out for those who would like to attend. Worship meeting for worship starts at 10 o'clock next week for yearly meeting Sunday. From the historic Western Yearly Meeting House, built in 1858, remodeled for the modern times in 1908 after it burned down. Or the interior did. So, and at least nowadays it's air conditioned. When I first went, it certainly wasn't, and it always seemed to be on the hottest days of the summer. So, but it's a great facility, and different meetings will be there. So, as soon as I get the link, I'll send it out for folks. Are there any other announcement type things? To, what about joys and concerns to share this morning? Well, certainly one joy and also concern we need to lift is our yearly meeting sessions. Those are always an important time in the life of gathered friends. And a joy we have is in about a month, our son Ben will be back from Japan for the first time in 5 years. He and his wife for a 2-week visit. So we're looking forward to seeing them. He's been there 26 years now. So hard to believe.
We enjoyed greatly the last 3 weeks with Dan's family. First in Nova Scotia for graduation for one of his granddaughters, and then they all came here for 8 days, and then we went to Minneapolis at his daughter's house for several days, and they left. It was just it had been a wonderful time, but we were glad for a day of nobody here, nobody around. But it's like a taste of heaven. That family gets along so well and respects and loves each other so much, and it's just always inspiring to be with them.
Well, and as Sylvia mentioned earlier, her brother Dave, who's normally with us, is on Nantucket Island right now. Last week it was Cape Cod. Now he's on Nantucket. So hopefully we'll see him soon when he returns back to Florida. So he's always a faithful attender, as is Jonathan's cat. Now we know meetings officially started.
Gives a new flavor to the presence in the midst, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, there are a great many things that we need to be holding in the light, of course, with the idea of still working towards peace in the Middle East and what going on in Ukraine and our own political situations here in the U.S. The divisions and how can we be agents of God in this time and bring light into this world in ways big and small as a group. So let us take some time to center and lift these things to God. Jonathan is our worship leader for the rest of the programmed time, and he will speak out of the silence and lead as he feels led.
I chose for my topic today what I've entitled The Supernatural in the New Testament and what it may mean for us today. Basically, just some thoughts brought together on that topic, and some ideas about basically what we might do with some of the material from the New Testament of that nature today. More stream of conscious thought probably than concrete suggestions, unless you find them to be concrete. Human beings are fascinated by the supernatural. I suspect that this has been the case since there have been humans. But before I go any further, I should likely define what I intend when I use the term the supernatural. By this, I mean any event that lies outside of the normal and expected operation of natural law. Therefore, I would include a host of events related in the New Testament under the heading of the supernatural. Those with even a cursory familiarity with the New Testament are doubtless aware that the texts composing these 27 books are chock full of miracle stories and stories of a decidedly supernatural type. The following is a by no means exhaustive list, in no particular order, of some of the supernatural occurrences related in the New Testament: the virgin birth, Jesus turning water into wine, healings of various conditions, including leprosy, a withered hand, a flow of blood, blindness, and even death, the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus walking on water, the transfiguration, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus, the fig tree cursed and withered, the deaths of Ananias and Sapphira, a host of demons cast out of people in various situations, Paul's vision on the road to Damascus, the gift of tongues, the descent of the Holy Spirit at Jesus' baptism and on the day of Pentecost, and John's visions on the island of Patmos, composing the book of Revelation. Many of these stories are so familiar to us that we may not necessarily consider their overtly supernatural content. How often do we really stop and envision the feeding of the 5,000 from a few loaves and fishes? Taking just this single example, the events related would have been beyond belief, even if one had witnessed them. When hearing this story as a child, I remember immediately wondering how the people present reacted. I posed questions such as, was anyone tempted to look into the baskets to see if the loaves and fishes were multiplying or appearing out of thin air? Did any of the people present for this event doubt its authenticity? If nothing else, this reveals to me that my Sunday school teachers were individuals of near infinite patience. Having been asking these kinds of questions as a child, I can't say that I've settled on explanations for all of them as an adult. In many ways, we live in a very materialistic, rationalistic culture. So I think it's understandable that most of us go looking for a material, rational explanation for tales of the supernatural, whether related in the New Testament or elsewhere. I often find myself stuck somewhere between this kind of cerebral dismissal of supernatural events and outright acceptance of them. This has led me to consider some of the ways in which we may engage with stories of miracles and supernatural occurrences today, and the reasons for which we might do so. One such way of engaging with tellings of supernatural events is one with which many of us are likely familiar. It goes something like this. We are obligated to accept the miracle stories related in the New Testament, particularly when they relate to Jesus, as a demonstration of our faith. This approach is one that, in my opinion, puts a greater focus on us than the claims made about the events in question. Here we have an engagement with supernatural events serving as a kind of test of how serious we are about accepting demonstrations of God's power, God's ability to bend and break natural law. The question of the events themselves is there, but it's secondary to the emphasis that's placed on our willingness to accept on faith things that defy our reason. Personally, I've never had much use for this approach. Even when I find myself willing and able to accept that various supernatural events occurred, I'm unable to see the benefit to us, let alone God, in this serving as some kind of proof that we take the things of God seriously. Another approach to supernatural events and miracles as related in the New Testament is to put them in the context of knowledge that we possess today, but which did not necessarily exist at the time in question. A common example of this way of thinking is to explain away the cases of demoniacs in the Bible as examples of individuals suffering from mental illnesses. Instead of evil spirits squatting in their bodies rent-free, the demons tormenting these poor souls were actually imbalances in the neurotransmitters in their brains. I've always found this explanation fairly interesting and compelling, which probably isn't surprising considering that I am a licensed therapist. Absent an understanding of everything from the inner workings of the human body to weather patterns and natural events such as earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, supernatural explanations were most likely the only ones available to the overwhelming majority of ancient populations. Today, we have access to a larger knowledge base in any number of these areas, although the extent to which we are taking advantage of that knowledge is certainly debatable. So what is my broader point in discussing the above? In essence, I hope to put forward today the suggestion that stories of the supernatural, as they appear in the New Testament, and for that matter, elsewhere, are of great value to us as human beings for a variety of reasons. For one thing, they help preserve a sense of wonder and of the unknown in a world that can very often feel bereft of both. Who wants to live in a world in which there is an explanation for everything? That may seem a strange question coming from someone who has been told any number of times that he supposedly came out of the womb asking why. But asking and expecting a concrete answer aren't necessarily the same things. Some things need to remain mysteries, in my opinion. Engaging with a story such as Jesus walking on water puts our minds, emotions, and spirits through their paces. We engage with this kind of story with our reason, to be sure, but it also makes us imagine, envision, and wrestle with possibilities. Did Jesus literally walk on the water? Is this some kind of metaphor? Does the story contain some kind of hidden symbolism? Is the answer yes to all of the above? Another reason that stories of the miraculous and fantastic can be of benefit for us today is that they can encourage a sense of intellectual humility. We certainly know a great many things more than people did in the first century, but we don't know everything. In some ways, it can be argued that we know less today than did people in the first century. For example, we are just as dependent today upon the availability of fresh water and land capable of producing the food that feeds us, yet many of us live lives that are almost entirely cut off from the earth and the cycle of its seasons. We're living in the midst of a climate crisis that is undeniable, and yet climate change somehow remains a divisive political issue. Is this any more enlightened than ancient people believing that Mount Vesuvius had erupted and destroyed Pompeii because of the anger of the gods? Perhaps we should be enlightened enough to recognize just how lacking in enlightenment we often remain. Christianity has long maintained that the canon of Scripture is divinely inspired. How one explains the nature of that inspiration and the extent of it is a matter of personal opinion. I would suggest that the ways in which biblical texts can inspire in us a wrestling with their meanings, particularly the more supernatural elements of the texts, is a form of such inspiration. Engagement with these writings may be one of the few opportunities that some people have to even consider the possibility of a reality beyond that which can be experienced through our five senses. Such an engagement may or may not lead us to answers, but if nothing else, it may show us how to continue asking questions.
Those of you who have known me for a while will probably find this hard to believe, but a therapist once told me that I had control issues. I'd like to have things orderly and in control. Had to do with taking a fear of flying class because I don't like flying that much. But I wonder how much of our needing explanation is thinking about Jonathan's message, is thinking about these stories and trying to say, so here's how this could have happened, is related to our wanting to feel like we have control of this situation. If we know what happened, then we have some control over it and can make it conform somehow to a worldview that is very rational. And I have enjoyed over these past, at least the last 20 years, a friendship with a fellow named Scott Russell Sanders, who is a sometime friend out of Bloomington, Indiana, who is a writer, and he wrote a book, A Private History of Awe. And this idea of we're losing any sense of awe in this world. And I think of the hymn, How Great Thou Art, that we used to sing when I was a kid, and the awe-inspiringness of those events. And that rationalism leaves no room for awe. It leaves no room for mystery. And where I used to like to debate theology, especially fresh out of seminary, the more I've lived with it, the more it seems like man-made constructs trying to explain that which is not explainable, and how much better we would be to invite people into awe, into mystery, and experience. Come experience this. And so, I don't want to speak for Nancy, but one of our mantras of late, probably also the last 20 years, is from a songwriter named Iris DeMent, who has a line in one of her songs, I'll just let the mystery be. And to embrace that. And I think that the sense of wonder returns when we can let the mystery be and just realize that there is so much more, so much more love, so much more mystery when we rest in God.
One of the thoughts that I have when we meet people, either on the screen or in person, people who think differently or act differently than what we're used to, do we accept them for who they are? Do we shun them because they're different, or because they think something differently than what our thoughts are? Can we accept them for just who they are and not shun somebody because they think different, look different, act different than what we're used to? Maybe that comes from the fact that I taught middle school, 13, 14, 15-year-old students for 50 years. And as a choir teacher, did my best to accept every student who wanted to be in choir. and to make a general rule in the room that nobody made fun of anybody else. I enjoyed junior high kids immensely. It was difficult. And when I finally retired, I had 300 kids in choir every day.
Two things rose up while Jonathan was speaking. One was a comment in Rilke's book on Letters to a Young Poet on how we need to learn to love the question. And that someday we may live into it, but right now we're not able to. But to love the question is what I've been trying to do. Now, it also, when you speak about supernaturalness, I would also put love into that. Love is very much supernatural to me. And I believe those messages in the Bible are speaking about love and teaching us that love can conquer big things. And I've seen it in my life, maybe not as big as in the Bible, but it just brings me to love. And I really appreciate this message.
Thank you, Jonathan and Norma, for your offerings this morning. And we'll continue with some more unprogrammed worship for those who can stay, and those who have other obligations. We pray that God be with you, and we hope to see you soon, either online or in person, depending on how we are brought together. So,
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I'll take care.
I don't know that anybody could say that I came out of the womb asking questions, but it certainly wouldn't be far from the truth to say that. And I grew up in a congregation that was much more comfortable with their answers than they were with my questions. It's taken me a long time to find a place that I felt was comfortable with me asking questions. And that's one of the things that I find so wonderful about this group of people is we understand that we're all on spiritual journeys. We're all asking questions, may not be the same questions, and we may not find the same answers, but that's okay. This group has become over the years a place where it's okay to ask the questions, and it's okay to realize we may not ever find the answers. But the point is to be looking and to be growing in our relationship with Spirit. And I'm just so grateful this morning to be a part of a group where it's okay to ask the questions, whether or not I find the answers.
I find it very comforting that we are talking about the question. And we ask questions that we can't answer so much in our lives. When the flagpole broke down on my head, the first question I had was, why? And the second one was, I need to love that question because it doesn't just stop there. It's what's coming forward, what I'm going to experience from this. And what I experienced was loving care for my wife, loving care and laughter from the nurses. And it lifted my spirits, even though I was going through some pain. And I don't think I complained once, because I had my eyes open to look for that. One of the biggest things in the Bible that I go to a lot is when in Mark, when Jesus healed the blind man, he asked them, "Can you see anything?" We get so trapped in our own heads that we don't always see what's around us. I too believe we are blind to the world. There is so much beauty in this world. We just need to find it, open our eyes, and let it in. That's what makes love such a supernatural thing, because love can change things in an instant.
If hearts are clear, we'll close meeting for worship for this week.
Good to see everybody.
Yep.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Bye.
Hope to see you all soon.